Okay. Bisan, we're ready? Qul Bismillah. Yalla. Okay. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome you here today at the Kenyon Institute. My name is Tawfiq Haddad. I'm the director of the Kenyon Institute, which is the local branch of the Council for British Research in the Levant. On behalf of the Kenyon Institute, the CBRL, as well as our trustees, some of whom are traveled distances to be here today for this opening, welcome to our premises on this lovely summer day. Today is a particularly special occasion for me personally, as well as for the organization. Today is the first event that we are actually hosting at the Kenyon Institute, where we have people on site. Because of COVID, I became the director of this place 2 months before COVID happened, and we really didn't have any opportunity to publicly engage. So for me, this is my inaugural public event, so I'm very happy about that. Thank you. Today is also an opportunity to listen to an esteemed lecturer who has been at the center of efforts to preserve and document and rehabilitate the Islamic architectural heritage of Jerusalem. I will leave it to my colleague Jessica Holland to speak more about our keynote speaker. But before we get to this, I'd like to take a few moments just to speak a little bit more about us at the Kenyon Institute and our vision and where we see ourselves today. So as I mentioned earlier, the Kenyon Institute is the Jerusalem branch of the Council for British Research in the Levant, sometimes known by its acronym CBRL, because that's quite a mouthful. So CBRL is an independent UK research charity and membership organization that exists to conduct, support, and promote humanities and social science research on the Levant. We're also part of what's known as the British International Research Institutes, who receive their support from the British Academy. We have over 100-year history in the region and have offices in London, Amman, and Jerusalem, with the Kenyon Institute being that one specifically. Like many of you, the past 2 years have been very challenging for us. We had to survive on a personal and professional levels. This was not easy on both accounts for us. Personally, we of course hope that you and your loved ones managed well through COVID, which is still around, of course. But it was also time to obviously pause and give us to take into consideration that we cannot take life and health for granted. Institutionally, the challenges were no less complex. For 2 years, researchers could not come here, and in many respects, academia, both locally as well as around the world, was thrown into disarray. As you all well know, during the past year, the events in this neighborhood led to conflagration that the whole entire world came to know about. And in addition to that, the situation has been made no easier by the fact that Israel has attempted to restrict the exact number and disciplines of researchers who come and work and conduct their research in occupied territories. While these challenges are formidable, COVID was also an opportunity to assess, evaluate, and take pause to reconsider our mission, vision, ethics, goals, and strategy with an eye towards openness and transparency, and to rethink our role and our model in today's world and in Jerusalem. What does it mean to be a research organization in general? What does it mean to be an organization that has its roots founded and associated with a colonial past? What does it mean when we exist today in a colonial present, in this neighbor in particular, which is very much on the front lines? We do not have answers to all these questions, but we have attempted to try and find answers to some of them. A major part of that has been how we spent our time for the past 2 years was to try and conduct renovations to improve the quality and basic infrastructure of our facility. A lot of hard work went into this from many parties who I would like to individually thank and on behalf of the organization. Of course, I'd like to thank the British Academy, who are core funders, as well as the AlTajir Trust, who have been historical partners to the Kenyon Institute and are currently supporting a digitization project, as well as who provided funding for the lighting in the library, as well as the Barakat Trust, who supported the carpentry works in the library. I'd also like to thank our contractors who conducted some of these renovations, as well as our staff members who engaged in the personal work and the hard labor of trying to put this place together. If you can imagine an organization like this with a 100-year history in the region, collects a lot of things, and sometimes you need to do an overhaul and a spring clean. We're very pleased with the results, and we welcome you to walk around the grounds of our garden as well as the facility in general. So please take time after the lecture to walk in and up and around into the library and the ground floor space, as well as behind the building. And I'll explain a little bit more about the renovations in due course. Working on infrastructure, however, and doing renovations is not enough. A key part of the past 2 years was also trying to go back to the drawing board and to answer more clearly and honestly what the role of researchers in the Levant and in a city like Jerusalem means. We took this time to assess every aspect of our organizational mission, goals, ethics, practices, and activities. Because when you come to think of it, the challenge of a city like Jerusalem has major regional and global implications that we cannot be blind to, and which others are not blind to as well. A key part of this process, though, was about recognizing that we are also not alone. Jerusalem is already a vibrant city with a very delicate ecosystem of research organizations, civic and cultural institutions that face many challenges and trials related to the context that we exist in today under occupation in Jerusalem. The research community in particular is in need of a lot of different things. We need freedom of access to conduct our research. We need security. We need the research. I don't want to speak individually for the organization, but for the research needs of researchers in Jerusalem. This community needs freedom of access. It needs security. It needs reliable financial and moral support. It needs space. It needs opportunity to think outside the box and not be driven all the time by donor-driven financial cycles. It also needs connectivity to the outside world, but also to itself. While we cannot provide all of these, we at the Kenyon and at the CBRL have tried to address these needs in our own ways. Our renovations have upgraded our facilities, quadrupling the amount of workspace in the library, creating a special archive room and rare books room, an audiovisual teleconferencing room, a podcast studio, and many indoor and outdoor meeting spaces where researchers can come and enjoy the lovely weather here and the facilities. Broadly speaking, we have a vision to establish an interdisciplinary research hub to cultivate and nurture research, working in collaboration with the parts of that part of the ecosystem of Jerusalem's research community. Because there are already many existing organizations that are working on research in Jerusalem, but often do so in isolation from one another, often as acting as natural competitors to one another because of the financial restraints of the situation. We aim to try and launch a hub here, an interdisciplinary research hub composed of research clusters, and aim in particular to try and to pilot this year at least 4 clusters in Palestine studies, political economy studies, both local as well as regional, archaeology and heritage studies, as well as refugee and migration studies, working with the pre-existing organizations that work in these fields, linking them with us, but also linking those with partner departments and organizations in the United Kingdom where we come from, where a great amount of expertise exists, all based on the principle that academia has no bounds and that we have a common interest in peer review, to share our activities, to share our publications, to share our connectivity, to share knowledge, and to have joint conferences and fundraising opportunities. Another aspect of our work has also been to attempt to open up our archives. And I'll leave a lot of this conversation to my colleague, but briefly put, we intend to open up and digitize large parts, as much as we can, of our archive to allow researchers to explore the rich and complex history of this organization and that all it has been involved with. And you'll hear more of that from Jessica when she follows. But but before we get there, this in part is why we have invited Dr. Natsheh today to speak. A man so central to attempting to preserve Jerusalem's Islamic heritage that is currently under threat. Figures like Dr. Natsheh have proven resilience and dedication for decades and have not been part of the academic fads that go in and out. In that regard, we have a responsibility to listen to figures like Dr. Natsheh in as much as we have a responsibility to speak. To conclude, it is instructive to note, just as we have been looking towards our past to understand how it has informed the present, so too must we assume that future researchers will look back at this time and at this place and ask what researchers did today, why, how, and to what effect. With that responsibility, fairly large, hanging before us, allow me to turn to my colleague, Dr. Jessica Holland, to speak about our efforts to digitize the efforts we were involved with around preserving Islamic architecture in Jerusalem, to be followed thereafter by our keynote lecture by Dr. Yusuf. So thank you for coming.
Thank you. Is it on? Yeah. So no small ask there then. Let me just, if you allow me to get my notes up as well. Close to the mic, is that all right? Can you hear me at the back? Thank you. Wonderful. Been providing Wi-Fi passwords, so got the wrong thing up. Give me a second. So I think we can all agree that the Institute looks fantastic and that the Institute looks fantastic. Yes? Yeah. And that I really hope that you all have a chance to have a look inside the library, at the lighting. And if any of you notice I'm putting the microphone down or forgetting as I speak, do let me know to bring it back up again. Wonderful. Okay, thank you. So it's my absolute pleasure today to speak to you a bit about the Islamic Jerusalem Archive project that we are starting this year. So my name is Jessica Holland. Unfortunately, I'm not a doctor yet, but I hope to be one day. So thank you for the elevation there. But for the moment, I'm the Strategic Projects Director at CBRL. And as one of the first projects I'll be working on for CBRL will be the Islamic Jerusalem Archive project, which is also supported by the AlTajir Trust. If you allow me, I'll first sketch out what we hope to achieve with this project, and then I'll introduce our distinguished speaker, Dr. Natsheh. So this year, overall, CBRL is significantly developing our digital and physical archival infrastructure. And this is really in order to make our historic holdings more accessible to researchers globally. As a successor of the British School of Archaeology in Jerusalem, we're the inheritor of a rich archive which includes the documentation of the city's Islamic heritage. And one of the most significant parts of this documentation is a survey that was decades long and groundbreaking on the architectural heritage of the city in particular, which resulted in a series of works called the Jerusalem Trilogy. This is a seminal group of reference works on Jerusalem's Ayyubid, Mamluk, and Ottoman buildings and monuments, which end up cataloguing the city's architectural history from the 12th to the 20th centuries. And this publication series was also supported by the AlTajir Trust, amongst others. Now, at the moment, these publications are only accessible in hard copy, in select libraries such as our own, or in private collections. And the unpublished archives, which include maps, photographs, drawings, and plans as well, are only accessible through on-site visits here or in the UK. Therefore, this project seeks to bring the Islamic Jerusalem trilogy to digital audiences for the first time. And we'll begin by digitizing the first volume in the series, which is Mamluk Jerusalem by Michael Burgoyne, and the resulting ebook will be made freely available on JSTOR. And in tandem with this effort to make the published material more widely available, We'll also be building the foundations for making the unpublished material available online too. We'll start by listing material held here at the Kenyon Insitute, making summaries of the contents available online in English and Arabic via our website. And we'll be working closely with our colleagues who are doing indexing efforts at the Palestine Exploration Fund in London. Excuse me, I've left my water down there, but I think I'll manage. Oh, thank you, Claire. So over the course of the project, we'll set up a digitization studio right here at the Kenyon. And a project archivist based here will also be digitizing illustrative materials from the collections. Excuse me. So the digitization of these scholarly works and their associated archives could pave the way for a multitude of new ways of engaging with these materials. So forgive me if I go off in a flight of fancy here about what the possibilities might be. But those of you who received a flyer for this event on the invitation have actually already witnessed the first case of reuse and reinterpretation of these materials. So many of you will have recognized the sketch of Sabil al-Qaitbeh on the flyer. And in fact, that digital illustration was created by our senior research officer in Amman, Shadha Mubayyeddin. But it was also based on a section drawing from that survey from the 1970s that I mentioned earlier. And future digital interventions could be even more ambitious. So the geolocation of the archival photographs and plans could be utilized through a mobile app, which would allow people to explore the city's Islamic monuments, taking a self-guided tour perhaps, and perhaps made even richer through the inclusion of augmented reality elements. But perhaps I should get back to the near future for a moment and speak specifically about the results of this project, the Islamic Jerusalem Archive Project. This will be shared on our upcoming CBRL Digital Archive Project site, which will be open access, interoperable with other archival sites, and working with linked open data. We hope this project will, most importantly perhaps, allow us to engage with archive professionals here in East Jerusalem and in the West Bank, and this will lay the foundations for further collaboration on related archives, we hope. But prior to that, however, I hope that we can look forward to inviting you to the launch of the digitized ebook of Mamluk Jerusalem later this year. So thank you very much. That's all I'll say about the archives. And let me introduce our speaker. So, hello, Dr. Yusuf. Thank you for coming. It's now my absolute pleasure to introduce Dr. Yusuf Natsheh, who many of you will already know, but I'll go through his achievements anyway. Dr. Natsheh is the General Director of the Center of Jerusalem Studies at Al-Quds University in the Old City of Jerusalem, and is a specialist in Ottoman architecture. He acted as Director of the prestigious Department of Tourism and Archaeology at the Awqaf Administration in the Noble Sanctuary in Jerusalem from 1977 to 2021, and he was responsible for overseeing the valuable collections of Islamic manuscripts in the Islamic Museum and the Restoration Center at Masjid al-Aqsa. Dr. Natsheh continues to be an active member of many Palestinian societies focused on architectural heritage in Jerusalem, and he also published several books and more than 60 articles focused specifically on Jerusalem's architectural heritage, including, of course, the well-received volume of the Islamic Jerusalem trilogy, Ottoman Jerusalem, The Living City, 1517 to 1917, and his recently published work, Discovering Jerusalem's Secrets, Walking Trails Through the Old City and Beyond. She's got with him today, fantastic, show and tell. Wonderful, so I think without further ado, if you'd join me in welcoming our speaker, Dr. Natsheh.
السلام عليكم. السلام عليكم. مساء الخير. Good evening. Thank you, Tawfiq, very much for giving me such an opportunity to be here to revive some of my past memories that still vivid but it needs to be reactivated. And thank you very much also for giving me the chance to meet my friends, colleagues, distinguished desks in such a very beautiful atmosphere, being with them, Olives, Cyprus, and being at Sheikh Jarrah, which really all of us know what Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood is facing in these days concerning the people and their really residency. Thank you, really, all of you, for coming, for your time. Sincerely, I do hope that the event will be informative, enjoyable, and you are not going to regret being here for such 20 minutes from my speech. However, really, truly, to be here, to be with you, and working with the Awqaf administration at Al-Aqsa Mosque in the Department of Archaeology and Tourism really gave me the chance, the opportunity to meet many diplomats, scholars, guests in Jerusalem. To the extent I remember most of the British councils who used to be in Jerusalem, starting maybe from early 80s when Mr. Hanum used to be the consul general here. And also that I met a lot of scholars, starting from hearing about Crystal Bennett, though I missed the chance to meet her really. But I have a vivid memory about many of the people who really put their efforts and their momentum for this institution, such as Reverend John Wilkinson, Richard Harper, Dennis Pringle, really, surely also Richard Brotherton, who used to be the British ambassador at Germany just before a few years, 3-4 years. And some of them really have passed, like Alistair Duncan, Michael Borgwin, which I mourned him just a few months ago. So sincerely, I wish that they are resting in peace. But if I forget anyone, I am not going to forget my colleagues who worked with me shoulder to shoulder, such as Sylvia Auld and Robert Hillenbrand. And so I send them my best wishes from this institution to Scotland. Mentioning Scotland, I remember that when I used to be young, really, I used to hear many jokes about Scottish people, especially about that sometimes they have been accused to be miserly people. And since I am from Hebron, also, most of the stubbornness, stupidity, also are attached to Hebron people. So in this regard, please allow me, help me to try to put a smile on your faces by mentioning a joke, which is so difficult to translate, but I will do my best. So a young couples, the husband is so miserly, reach really a dispute that their marriage reached the brink of collapse. So one of his colleagues advised him, you should see a marriage consultant. So he went. It used to be a very charming, beautiful young lady. She said, your problem is so simple. I just need 3 sessions. One with you, one with your wife, and one with the 3 of us. And my dear husband, this will cost you $1,200 American. So the man approached his beloved wife and said, please come, let's go home, or our dispute used to be for just $100 American. So that's it. So having said that, really, thank you. I would like to come back to you. Just allow me, as Tawfiq said, I will follow his steps. As he really made some notes for his institution, also I'm proud to let you know what is Jerusalem Study Center. Jerusalem Study Center, really, it's a center which belongs to Al-Quds University, as it mentioned, in the heart of the old city of Jerusalem. We are so happy that since 20 years, we are really have a program that will enable our local Palestinian students to have their M degree in Jerusalem studies. Also, from time to time, we do some lectures to really enlighten our young. We do some lecture tours in English to show other perspective or Palestinian perspective. And above all, also, we really have a unit which concentrate to teach Arabic for non-speakers. And some of you maybe, or some of others really used to be of our students. And we are trying also our best that the old city of Jerusalem to be as active as possible. So, having said that, it is time to go to our really topic. And really, what I would like to say that if what has happened, what has been achieved in the last century, on the last 45 years concerning Islamic architectural heritage of the old city of Jerusalem. Actually, if before, up till the early of 1970s, if someone will do a research or will ask someone, what do we have concerning the data about this architecture, if we exclude the Dome of the Rock, Al-Jami al-Aqsa, the Church of Holy Sepulchre, and to some extent the Wall of Jerusalem, actually our information used to be very, very modest, and it is really limited. And most of these were taken actually from two sources. The first is Mujir al-Din, which is a historian from the Mamluk period. He is the best. And also our late scholar Arif al-Arif. The rest really are very, very superficial. So all of this information used to be very abridged, historical, no plans, no analysis, no photographs. Though most of us know, and at that time, that we have really very valuable data hidden in the religious court and in other places. So 1967 and after May really used to be a turning point concerning the caring and the attention of Islamic architectural heritage of Jerusalem. We know, all of us, that immediately after May of 1967, the Mughrabi neighborhood was completely erased. And that a project of excavation beneath around Al-Aqsa Mosque used to be conducted by the Ministry of Religious Affairs at that time. As a result of such an excavation, really, few, let's say, Islamic buildings, very important, used to suffer from really cracks, collapse, especially where is the Iron Gate, where is used to be my office. And we know that the Rabat Court, Al-Jawhariyah, and the rest were really under a threat. And at that time, also taking in consideration the excavation, the Mughrabi neighborhood destruction completely without any documentation, really it touches the nerves of all the people who were used to care for Jerusalem. At that time, the British school really faced a dilemma concerning their project of excavations. It used to be a very vague situation, very complicated. The situation has been dramatically changed from Jordanian times to the Israeli times. The Israeli scholars used to dominate all the excavation. And at that time, I think Crystal Bennett, with the rest of the people, reached a conclusion that the British school, if they can't excavate, if they can't really continue their project, they should do something else. So instead of going down, let's go and really try to document and to survey the valuable landmarks of Mamluk buildings at that time. So it started by really bringing architects from Oxford, from universities, and ask them to do some survey. I remember Archibald Walls, who's still really active and still really vivid in his Facebook. You can follow him really, and we have some exchange together. So Archibald Walls concentrated on the Kilania Mausoleum, then our respected, beloved Michael Borgwin, who passed recently, also came here, and by Michael Borgwin and John Rivet Wilkinson and Alistair Duncan, the trilogy, they reach a conclusion that instead of doing a survey, doing analysis, publishing that in Levant, let's do something more valuable, more practical to serve Jerusalem. So let's raise money, let's have a fundraising, let's do a monumental book about Mamluk Jerusalem. We have to remember that at that time, Michael Borgwin got his PhD on Mamluk Bahri architecture of Jerusalem. So he was prepared, actually. So they started, instead of publishing in Levant, as it happens with the Kilania, first and second volume, and with the collapse and the survey of Rabat al-Kurd, John Rivet Wilkinson said, let's do a monumental book. So it started the work of the British School for a long term, which took really more than 14 years to accomplish such a monumental survey of Mamluk Jerusalem. At that time, really, also the Awqaf administration reached a conclusion that appreciating the work of the British School of Archaeology, but we have different objectives. We have really aims to share together, but we have different approaches. At that time, I remember as a young person at that time, Mr. Kamel Sharif, who used to be a very enlightened person from the Muslim Brotherhood, but he had used a very good connection and relations with most of the people, also decided that a section or a branch or department to care for Muslim architecture should be constructed in the Awqaf administration, which I used to work there. It's so lovely. It's so really practical that both institutions worked on the same project. We collaborated together. We helped each other. Each one has his own objective. Ours, as I was an eyewitness of that and contributed with this philosophy, my aim, my principal aim at that time is to try to create a team, local team, who really could appreciate this heritage. Because by appreciating your heritage, you will be able to appreciate other heritage. And in addition to that, to have the opportunity to deal with them. You have to remember that the British School, though very much appreciated, but this is a documentation. And most of the plans will be kept at Oxford. And these people are coming here, doing a duty, then they will come back to their country. If I would like to have their advice, their contribution, it is a complicated process. So fortunately, we work together, so we help them to giving them access, whatever documentation we have, we used to give Michael, and so on. In the year 1987, we saw the first baby, Mamluk Jerusalem. It used to be very nice, it used to be very elegant, and then it is the time that I used to be the director of that department. Though I did the survey of the Mamluk Jerusalem, but with my inner feeling, I concentrated in Ottoman Jerusalem, actually, to what I do appreciate, really, also I followed the approach, the way how John Wilkinson saw his work. So instead being enthusiasm or rapidly looking for such an achievement, I never ever published any study about Ottoman Jerusalem monuments. It was kept an accumulation of plans, photographs, some documentation till the moment approached. That moment used to be in 3 years in early 99 when Mr. Hanum, Hillenbrand, Alistair Duncan, they approached the Awqaf administration that they would like to do Ottoman Jerusalem. So all the plans are ready. We need some luck. And that luck was really with me when I went to the religious court of Jerusalem religious court. And fortunately, I found a very impressive new material about the Waqfiyat. So after 1987, Mamluk Jerusalem was born. 2000, really, 10 years, really, it took us to achieve Ottoman Jerusalem as a second baby or a second brother. And it has to really wait another 9 years to have Ayyubid Jerusalem. But each project really has its own features, has its own circumstances, its completion. It's a serious, but each one has his own really. However, so this is how I see myself here. And what I would like to sum up here, that we have the three. In addition to that, also the Welfare Association, the Awqaf administration also, it tried to really do more than doing documentation. It is the preservation. So the Awqaf administration also, as much as they can, raised many projects to restore, to preserve, to try to repair these monuments. I remember we ran a project for about 10 years. It used to be at Bab Stinsle. And also later, the Welfare Association contributed. If someone will ask what has been achieved really in the last 50 years, first of all, we have really a brilliant documentation of most the public buildings of Jerusalem, whether they are really Ottoman or Mamluk or Ayyubid. And also we have to take in consideration that the Umayyad period has already been documented by Hamilton, by Creswell, and by other treaties at that time. So from this point of view, plans, sections, details, documentation, well preserved. So we started a project of preserving the Muslim architecture, especially at Bab Silsile, the road which adjacent to the Western Wall. It is a buffer zone, could be considered between the what it's called the Jewish quarter, between the Muslim quarter. So we're concentrated in there. And now also we can say, taking Nazm al-Ju'bi as my authority, really, the monuments of Jerusalem, especially the Dome of the Rock, Al-Aqsa Mosque, Jerusalem heritage in general, really, it is in best time of its preservation and its really maintenance. Rarely you will go to the past to see such situation. And being a little humble or modest, I think our monuments really much better preserved than certain parts of Salihiyya of Damascus. And I remember visiting Salihiyya with Michael Borgon also in one of our conferences, and even in Egypt. But having said that, it doesn't mean that Jerusalem architecture heritage has no problem. Really, we are so happy that when we started our survey, most of Jerusalem's people used to know these buildings by the people who are dwelling within it. Never ever gave it the historical name, whether it is Tushtumuri or Kilaniya. They used to be Dar al-Imam, Dar al-Husseini, Dar al-Afifi, so on, to the extent that the identity of such a building were really temporarily ignored and really have been. So we tried. Now people say Khan Tankaz, they say not Dar al-Khaldi or so on. So this is another. So what, let me say, if the preservation are good in Jerusalem and the documentation are excellent, so what is the issue of Jerusalem architecture heritage? What threats do we have? What problems we should tackle? First of all, let's go for the academic approach. Most of these efforts concentrated in the public buildings. Never ever tried really to go for vernacular architecture, or what we said to complexes, hosh, or to make a study as unit, not separating each monument from its environment or its geographical location. So far, what it has been done, it's so modest, so it need to have an eye bared for all Jerusalem architecture and how it is really connected together. Also, though we have a good state of awareness among our youngs, but still these monuments, whether they are public or they are private, suffering from a very important issue, which they have really high density of really dwellings, residence. Whenever you go for such a building, you will see it either an office or a house. If it's a house, surely you have to imagine that these people, though they preserve the building, but they have their own needs. All the wives' halls, all the wives, all the girls, they would like to have modern facilities inside. These buildings are 800 years old, 700 years old. How you can really fulfill your ambition with healthy, modern housing while you are really challenging, thanks, you are challenged by many difficulties. Now, also, no one could really ignore what it's really our threat. For us, 5 minutes, for us really architecture, heritage, it's a sort of identity. It's a sort of belonging. It's a sort of resistance. Take, for instance, Damascus Gate, Bab al-Amoud. What is the meaning of Bab al-Amoud for all the youngs, for all the people, for old man, for a woman, something? It's now growing, and it's really so difficult for us. So one of the main problem which really are threatening Muslim heritage, the imposed rapid development which the Israelis project are implementing in Jerusalem, especially in the Western Wall Plaza or Ha'it al-Burak, what is going around Al-Aqsa Mosque. All of these modern renovation, modern architecture, we see it as really using heritage or using the past to really serve political agenda. In our humble opinion, archaeology, architecture stopped to be as a science in Jerusalem, in the Holy Land. It is really a political approach. It is a tool in order to justify the presence, and surely no need for me to refer you to Keith Whitelam in his book in a very important issue which we are really facing in these days. It is the problem of naming. I will give you one example how Palestinian society are really feel very odd and not comprehending or accepting such approach. Can you imagine Damascus Gate and its heritage from Roman period, from Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent? It's really a reflection of the beautiful school of Ottoman architecture at that time. Before 2 years, something like this, the municipality decided first to name the steps of Bab al-Amoud after Hadas, I wrote an article about it. So why we should really, as a Palestinian, annoyed, not accepting, resisting, refusing such an approach. Bab al-Amud has a very, very long history with a long of people, martyrs of Palestinian, Jordanian soldier, something. How come that a municipality accept to separate the space between the gate and its steps and giving them a name of two soldiers, one police and the other is a police order at that time. So names, now we have a campaign. And another example of naming or implementing names, it's how they really express the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the Temple Mount. When someone used to approach me by phone, I need a visit, we would like to ask how we can visit the Temple Mount. Simply I responded, there is no Temple Mount, there is Al-Aqsa Mosque. How come you give an old name, really, for such a building or such a site has been for 1400 years developed? This is not academic, this is not a standard. If you, and how they can name it, even when they speak about Ottoman period or Mamluk period or Umayyad period, maybe someone can comprehend. If you are speaking about the Roman period, it could be understand that this is could be, but this for me, for others, for all of us, it is really a sort of eradication. So naming, as Keith Whitelam says, I quote, never ever being neutral. Names are really has an implication. So if we give this issue, the excavation, how it is really represented, how it is analyzed, it's still a great issue for a Palestinian, whether it is in the Umayyad palaces or it is in other places. How to really try to Judaize. I have a very deep example of Nabi Dawood, but the time is not allowing us. I would like also to say that the problem which is facing Muslim or Jerusalem architecture, regardless whether it is a Muslim, but I would like to say it Arabic, it's not just a physical dangerous. It is how these monuments are represented, really. The narrative, how they are really narrated in Western literature, in the media, that is really a great issue. And I know this is the responsibility of our society, the responsibility of the academics. It's not just the Israelis who are really trying to confiscate or trying to something. One of the things also which really concerns the old city of Jerusalem, that for a young Zionist American, the old city of Jerusalem is just the Jewish quarter, the Western Wall. Nothing value, nothing deserve to be visited or even to be mentioned at that time. However, really, what it's really concern us, it's what is going in the ground, the heaven, in everywhere really. We see how physically our architecture are in a good shape, but no one can predict what is going to be under Al-Aqsa Mosque or what sort of things. We are really so feeling, to some extent, it's difficult to express the feeling of disappointment, the feeling, forget it, the feeling I finished. It's the wind, it's not my responsibility. Okay, thank you. It is how really you see that certain of your heritage has been really smashed in the Western Wall, documented, while recently some of the right-wing Israelis are excavating the past and trying to show that there are articles which speak about the graffiti in the Bab al-Rahmi, Bab al-Tawbi, or name here or name there, depending on most of of really most probably the circumstances, evidences, making these evidences as a circumstance as a true past for the things. So the Palestinian, I think what we can do is to fight against really such an approach for radicals, and you'll see anyone who are witnessing what is going in Al-Aqsa Mosque will see that there are a remarkable change concerning the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the Muslim Authority, and really it needs something. Thank you very much for your listening. I am sure if you have any other points or something, we can really elaborate more.
I'd like to open up the microphone now if anybody has any particular questions. Okay, so.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for that, Dr. Natsheh. Do I have to stand up? Well, I'm not going to stand up. Anyways, I was just wondering what the Waqf is doing about the types of things you were mentioning, particularly groups like Al-Aud, and how they're increasingly controlling archaeology in Jerusalem. And also if you could comment about the recent praying of the Jews at Al-Aqsa, that type of action, and what that means, and what the Waqf might do about that, or what they're saying about that. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you for your questions. Actually, we can differentiate between two phases concerning the relation of the Waqf with the Israeli Authority. 1967 up to 2000, then 2000 up down. Any interested person who study this period or can really follow it will see that 2000, after Sharon visit, after the successful rehabilitation of Al-Musalla Al-Marwani, the Israeli policy remarkably changed concerning the Awqaf. Really, they show their iron fist. Usually when they used to discuss with them or to have an issue, there used to be space or an opportunity or a hope, let's say. But in these days, I don't think that it's happened. What the Awqaf is doing really is not that much, because the Awqaf is administration which belong to Jordan. Jordan is controlling, and it's about the custody, Jordanian custodian of the Holy Land. But the Awqaf used to do really the following. They used to issue a communique or sending letters, protesting, really trying to shed lights, warning something, calling for Jordan, calling for anyone who would like to help, like UNESCO. But all of these proved to be with limited, really, results. And the situation in these days, it's so obvious, so clear that the right-wing Israeli society, I will not say the government, I will not say, as we usually say, Netanyahu or Shamir, or it's not a personality, it's a policy of a society that they are not really, they are giving deaf ear to anyone. And that makes the situation so difficult for all, and especially for Jordan. Concerning the prayer, that really also will it is understandable, which really the fear of a person like me. Now I try to be as academic as possible and trying to be as reasonable as possible. But really, in my humble opinion, my modest understanding concerning the Israeli policy towards Al-Aqsa Mosque, they have two strategies. One, it's short term, and the second is long term. The short term one is really to compete and to dispute with the Palestinians, whether the Awqaf or others, concerning the sovereignty. So they would like to show they are controlling everything, even to change a lamp or to fix a sewage or a water pipe. They should be really they should be under control, and it takes weeks and weeks sometimes to get. The long term, unfortunately, I see it that they would like to rebuild the third temple. I keep quoting really. 15 years ago, I wrote an article about against the center, which is named Ethan and Miriam Davidson. It's a museum inaugurated before 15 years. It uses the American Navy simulation. The power of the computer there, it's double than any personal computer by 3,050 times. It takes really weeks to be trained. And when this museum was inaugurated, one of the journalists asked the rabbi, "Dear Rabbi, when you are planning to build the third temple?" He said, "We would like to build the temple in the minds of the people first." If one will have a really an eye-bird look to see the slow but based change of the Israeli policy, if they see the change of the religious opinion or the fatwa, really it is a fear. Taking in consideration what happens with the Trump administration, the evangelists, the people who would like really to push all the prophecies which is mentioned in the Old Testament and the New Testament, you feel fear. Many things, people, Palestinian local people, never ever imagined that this will happen in Al-Aqsa. Now it's happening. So it's a matter of time, in my humble opinion.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
I'm Bob Bewley. I'm the chair of CBRL, but thank you very much for that inspirational talk, and all power to your elbow. Just continuing your theme about the identity that buildings give us, there's a really good book by Robert Bevan called The Destruction of Memory. I don't know if you've read it, but it tracks the destruction of buildings right across Europe in the last 150 years. And it has a big echo with what you said. Now, I've got a very specific question, and in a sense, it's how maybe we can help you. But you mentioned that there are plans and drawings that were taken to Oxford. Did they ever come back? Are they still stuck in Oxford? Is that also linking with Jessica's project in terms of digitization? So, but thank you again for a very inspirational talk.
As far as I remember, they are at Oxford.
So you've never seen them?
No, it is published, but if you would like to make a restoration project, if you would like to consult these plans, you have to write really to them, and it's a matter of approaching, of getting academic documents. So you will be treated as a student. You will be treated according to their rules. As it, they have the copyright, which I respect really. We have our plans. When we did Jerusalem, Ottoman Jerusalem, actually, all of our plans has been redrawn, but it used to be ready. So I insisted this should be a joint copyright. So this is how to balance really. Maybe sometimes even you will keep it outside, it is positive, not negative, but it will make it a little bit complicated for our students.
Just on the archives, I might come back on that one. So there's a large portion of the Mamluk Jerusalem archive is actually at the PEF in London, the Palestine Exploration Fund, and the publication archive of the Ottoman Jerusalem volume is also at the PEF. As I said, we started with the Mamluk because BSAJ has some copyright over the text and the survey materials, so it's a bit more simple for us to start with that one. But hopefully over the next couple of years, if everything goes well and we get funding for the digitization of the other volumes, we can start to answer those questions about exactly how and where we can best make, and if it's appropriate for us to be involved in making the plans available, then we will do so. But for now, we're starting with the books where the copyright is clear.
But if you allow me just to have a comment, really, life are really changing rapidly. when Michael Boga used to work, when we used to work, we used to use really simple tools. It used to be dedicated. It used to be done with love, with sincerity. But today, with the AutoCAD, with all of this modernization, really, it is another challenge. But at least it will give us an idea what efforts were exerted at that time in a certain period.
Thank you, Dr. Yusuf, for the interesting lecture. I just want to comment on the fact that the drawings are not in Jerusalem. Most of these drawings were redrawn again by the institutions who are working in restoring these buildings. This is a loss of time and money. We do not have to repeat the work. I think the Welfare Association, as other institutions who are restoring these buildings, are redrawing a work which was done 30, 40 years ago. I respect the right of the writers, the copyright, the intellectual right, etc. But that can be kept in different ways. I mean, that can be given to these institutions with the term that they write down, the copyright belongs to the British School of Archaeology. Full stop. We do not have to repeat it again. I mean, this is a loss of time and money. Thank you.
You are quite right. Even this issue is among, to be frank with you, with the people, and to be honest, even within our Palestinian institution, it's the same. But however, it's supposed, with this modern technology, it's supposed really to be available for all who would like, as you mentioned, to admit the copyright and to not to ignore the work of the people who preceded them.
I would like to ask about, I would like to say first, thank you very much for the idea of digitizing these three very important books, starting with Mamluk Jerusalem. I remember as a student in architecture, it was very difficult to reach these information. Thanks to Dr. Nazmi, who was very helpful in lending us books at the time. Shukran, Dr. Nazmi. My question was about copyrights, but you already mentioned that. I have another question about not only digitizing. Do you think in the Kenyon Insitute of translating these books into Arabic or other languages, especially for students who are studying in Palestinian universities? Thank you.
Thank you. This is a dream, actually, a dream waiting to be achieved. However, what I would like to say that we tried to balance sometimes that within the Welfare Association, we tried our best to make it bilingual. Arabic, English to some extent, but it's not easy. So this is about Dar Aitam. This is about Al-Ashrafiyya. It's not repeating the historical material. It is to be a manual for the young architects how to deal with historic buildings from documentation point of view and from restoration point of view. What is needed, what is your manual, what you have to do. And also this is a bridge also the experience in trying to restore and maintain one of the most impressive buildings, really. It's Salamiyya with its stalactite something. But this one, which is the last of my books, it's about styles, architectural styles of Jerusalem. It is in Arabic, but I hope it will be a tool for our students. It's really so odd that such three books concerning Jerusalem history, Jerusalem architecture, never ever tried to be translated in Arabic. I remember that as early as before 11 September, the Palestinian organization for research, they tried, but then it used to be collapse. Even, unfortunately, Ottoman Jerusalem is not translated for Turkish languages, though it is about Ottoman architecture. And one of our maybe challenges in the near future to know what is the Turkish people, the academic Turkish people is working on Jerusalem, and whether they know what we have achieved as Palestinians, or can we know what sort of really research articles they have published in Turkish language. So though it is an open word and you can Google anyone, but it's still, there are many hindrances really, there are many obstacles that it's supposed to be that. One of our main challenges, I think, as a person, how to avoid repetition, how to serve a new matter, how to have an idea which deserves to be implemented. And that it's not just in architecture, I think in our other languages. Dr. Iskandar. Sorry, I want to wait a little.
Okay, thank you very much. It is very, very interesting. The question now that I don't know how to phrase it. It's my voice, yeah?
One of the.
I have hindrances here. My question really, in order to, what shall I say? In order to save the past, what should we do about the future? Jerusalem is not just Muslim city. It is also Christian city. They came and fought about it for whatever reasons. And the sites in Jerusalem, you have very many Christian sites from all denominations. So what shall we do? How can we approach internationally? And as you know, the Qarar Taqsim partition, the Jerusalem was supposedly to be international. So this is the question that we have to look forward. It's not Christian, it's not Muslim and Jews. There are many Christians. These should be held responsible. They came here not to build just a holy sepulchre, for the sites, for the land, let's say, to have their presence here. I think this also should be addressed. Whom should we approach? We can't work alone. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for your questions. But humbly, I am proud to say I never ever looked for the city as a Muslim architecture. Really, in my treaties, in my books, in my trying to raise the awareness of the young Palestinians, I wrote about the Church of Saprika whenever we have a joint project. Most of the churches are mentioned. We consider it really is a true part of our of Jerusalem heritage, of our heritage. You can really say that. But however, I would like to say that the Church of Holy Sepulchre, from academic point of view, really, they have a very, very comprehensive documentation from Father Padua, from others. So there are a lot of institutions who work there, and almost we know all the details. And in the Church of Holy Sepulchre, they have their own really problems. But surely we should look for the city as really a united one, not to be separated. One of the most ugly myth of Jerusalem history is that Jerusalem four quarters. Never ever in history. If you can just go with virtual walking from St. Stephen's Gate to Al-Wadi Street, most of the important Christians locations, institutions are located in the heart of the Muslim quarter. But you know, unfortunately, Jerusalem is a city of mythicism also. Whenever you will go to the Bab al-Asbat, St. Stephen's Gate, you will see really something you can't comprehend about the four lions. I wrote about them. I try to analyze, to educate people. But legend really have the power of dominating the thinking of the people. Though you start by saying this is a legend, but they will leave the facts and they will stick to the legends. Take about the tombs of Bab al-Khalil. They keep all the guides, most of the guides, they keep saying these are the two architects which were executed by Suleiman the Magnificent because they failed to include the Mount of Zion within Jerusalem walls. I wrote about it in much details in English and in Arabic, really, but it is still dominated. So this is maybe some of the beauty of Jerusalem, but unfortunately, sometimes people don't like to go for the facts. They would like to have a beautiful story. It is still a challenge, really, for us for the future. And I think the problem of Jerusalem is not just architecture or how we can see it. It's very, as you all of us know, it is very complicated. It's political, it's existence, it's economic, it's everyday life. Heritage architecture is just one aspect of such challenges which are really the Palestinians are facing, and they are trying to really to resist and to try to really be more creative. And I believe in the youngs. The youngs are really, some of them are really doing their best through the mobiles, through the things. What is doing now in the old city, many trails, many tourists, many tours, really, it's helping. But it's still a great issue. We have not to forget whatever good situation we are enjoying, we are under occupation.
طيب شكرا دكتور يوسف دكتور توفيق شكرا على الندوة. I just want to ask question Yusuf يعني maybe where are the Jordanians at the moment in the whole escalation of the what's going on in the Aqsa Mosque in terms of dividing? It's clear the division, the time frame for the Jewish settlers and also international Jewish who are getting to the mosque through the Mughrabi gate and every day. So it's clear that it's divided. It's clear that the time frame is from 7 o'clock in the morning until 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and then from 2 o'clock until 3 o'clock. So what's the reaction of the Jordanians if we have any idea where we're going? You mentioned that they're going to the third stage or the last stage, but we want to know as Palestinians also what are our counteractive actions to those policies, because on the ground everything is going smoothly as we've seen in Ramadan. There's a lot of resistance and actions, but there should be a counter initiatives also for the Palestinians themselves, where not only the Jordanians, because they're absent after all, absent also in Sheikh Jarrah here next door.
Forgive me for my frankness. We are waiting for a miracle. And the time of the miracles, I think, finished. It's not defending Jordan, but I would like to be as realistic as possible. Surely Jordan has an responsibility, ethical responsibility, political responsibility, whatever responsibility you can. But the issue is not just Jordan. Believe me, it's not the Awqaf administration. It is a whole Palestinian society. What is other people? What is my responsibility? What is other responsibility? What is the other? Whatever, I will not say anything about the international community because I really fed up with such comments of things. Really, unfortunately, it is so far a closed door, especially with what is going with the Israeli right-wing approaches, the settlers. There is, in these days, unfortunately, though I am always optimistic, but I feel there is no breakthrough so near. It is something, even as I never being a political, or I am not concerned with politics. I don't think even the visit of Mr. Biden will add or will ease anything. Maybe it's coming here to just compromise for something which will be not as any Palestinian will think about it. It is really a very dark, complicated situation, in my opinion. Let's not force ourselves.
Unless there are other questions, I think allow me to thank Dr. Yusuf for his fascinating and insights and lecture today. It was truly insightful and moving, and leaves us with a lot to think about. So thank you very much for that, and please thank him. Habib. So I'd just like to invite you to walk around the premises, discuss amongst yourselves. You're free to walk around the building, walk in the building, talk with Dr. Yusuf, etc. Please feel free and enjoy the space. Take care. Thank you.